Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Since recently I'm preparing for a very important tournament, I don't have enough time to follow the footsteps of these recent top tournaments or events. So I'm pre-recording this this whole series. And this series is about games or positions that my coach used to teach us at my chess school. And all of these games and positions, they are being carefully chosen by my coach, who is actually an international master, very strong actually. And he'll teach all of these things to us, the openings, middle games, and end game techniques. Very interesting, I think. And now I'm going to share these games and everything with you guys. I think it's also a great way for me to review the things that I have learned. All right. Today we'll be taking a look at this game played between, actually I'm not sure who White is. White is someone called Halldorsson Gudmundur. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but Black is, everyone knows him, Magnus Carlsen. Well, actually this game was played in 2004. At that time, Magnus only has a rating of about 2,500, pretty low than his rating right now, which is 2,800. But his opponent is only a player rated 2,200, and of course, it is actually a big rating gap. Now, we won't be taking a look at this whole game. We might be skipping some opening parts and go to the most crucial or important part, which is in the end game part. But first of all, oh, that was a little bit like tongue twister. Just first of all, let's take a look at the opening, just a few moves. Here, Magnus is Black, and his opponent started with e4 and c5, knight f3, d6, bishop b5 check, bishop d7, bishop takes, and queen d7. Short castle, knight c6. Well, actually, this is the Sicilian defense, the canal. And actually, this is just the main line. I think both players are playing all the best moves, c3, knight f6, and d4. Well, Magnus is, of course, playing all of the best moves, and right now his opponent is also, probably his opponent knows all the book moves and is still playing very accurately. And after 94 d5, of course, 95, well, I suppose that during the game, both players are just blitzing out all of these moves because I'm pretty sure that they all know how to play this opening. And yeah, they're playing all of the best moves. And after knight f6, well, actually already here, Magnus is somehow making a few inaccurate moves. What is better here is actually first of all to go knight f3, and after queen f3, then go back with knight f6. Because if you don't go knight f3 and then if you go knight f6 immediately, there's now knight takes c5 as played in the game, and after d takes c5, there's actually c4. And I think c4 is the move where actually Magnus kind of overlooked. Probably he thought that there was something like rook e5, and if my opponent goes rook e5, there's e6. And I'll pin this pawn, and if you go c4 right now, there's just bishop d6 and short castle in the next few moves, and Black should be much faster in development than White is. But probably Magnus didn't saw that there was c4 immediately, and after c4, g6, rook takes c5, and bishop g7. After knight c3, short castle. Well, actually right now, White is kind of in a comfort zone because White's pieces are all pretty active, and these two pawns are actually really strong. Black is not playing that convenient, and I think Magnus should be playing slowing down his speed and start to think. Rook e1, knight g4. Knight g4's idea is actually to get the knight to e5 or get the bishop to d4, many ideas. Bishop f4 and bishop d4 attacking the f2 pawn, and bishop g3, a6, preventing knight b5. Well, actually here, well, of course, White cannot go knight b5 right now because you'll lose the f2 pawn. And actually, if you defend the pawn in another way, for example, rook e2, well, actually, there's a very interesting idea here, which is actually to go e5 here. e5, of course, needs a lot of calculation, so I'm also playing this variation by according to the engine. And after e5, there's d takes, there's d takes e6 en passant, and after f takes e6, well, you might say that black's pawn structure is somehow a little bit damaged. Well, it is, I guess. The e6 pawn is a little bit weak. But, of course, black has a lot of compensation for that. He is lead in development, as well as, like, 3 of these pieces are putting the pressure on f2 pawn. It's not that easy for white to play, actually. Alright, so of course in the game, bishop g3 was played the best way to defend. And after a6, rook b1, and queen f5. You can see that Magnus is actually doing all of his best, putting all of his pieces to, like, attack the f2 pawn. It's actually not that easy to, like, really just win the f2 pawn, because white can still, like, defend it with the queen and everything, as played in the game, even offering a trade of queens. And in the game, knight h6 was played, queen takes, and knight takes. Well, actually here, I'm gonna go a bit fast, like in these in these few moves, like, because it's not that important. But after, like, trading off the minor pieces, after knight e4, knight f4, and after knight d3, and rook d3, we reach this position where this is the most crucial position in this whole game, after rook d3. Well, you might say this is just a, like, very normal rook and pawn endgame where both sides have equalized pawns, equalized material basically, and white here has a center isolated pawn and black has a back ring pawn. Well, this position is, like, positional imbalanced, as I call it that way, because even if, like, material is pretty much the same, but it's like the position is still, like, good for one of the sides. And here I want you guys to stop and evaluate this position. Who is better? What are both sides' ideas? Well, of course, just by looking at the eval bar, you can tell that, you know, black is better here, slightly better, just a little bit better in this position. And white is, white is not that bad, but the main problem for white is this d5 pawn. It is being pushed too high, and no other pawns can reach and defend the pawn, which means that this pawn has to be defended by these 2 rooks. And if black were able to achieve this kind of scene after, like, moving the king up the board and doubling the rooks on the d file, putting all the pressure on the d pawn, then black might be, like, winning, or, like, winning this pawn, and white might be under some, like, pressure. So the main question is, all right, it is black to move right now, and the main question is, how can black continue or play the best moves to gain or maintain the advantage, and how is the best way for white to really, like, try to hold the game? Well, in the game, Magnus here played the best move, which is actually pretty logical, and he played rook d8. First of all, saying that, okay, in the future, I might have some rook a d7. Like, I am preparing for rook a d7 to, you know, like, attack the d5 pawn, and it's white's turn to react. And here, actually, white played a bad move, which is rook e d1. Not, like, extremely bad, but it's, like, sometimes in these kinds of concrete endgames, one small inaccuracy can lead to disasters. And the best move here is actually for white to just start pushing the pawns, go g4, and then allow white's king to go over to the e4 square in a much faster route. And probably white will be holding a much easier draw. But in the game, rook e d1 was played, which is also fun. Like, white's king can still come over with this way. But it gives black some chances after rook a d7, preparing for some e6 ideas or rook d6, e6 ideas, king f1. Of course, you cannot go e6 right now. Like, of course, it's actually really tricky because white can just basically take here. And if you play rook d3, rook takes d3, and if you take, there's e7, which leads to, like, promotion, and it's unstoppable. But probably here, after you probably have to go for something like rook e8, but now you'll just be down a pawn after e takes f7, king takes. White will be winning right now. But of course, Magnus saw this trick by white and didn't play e6. And in the game, he played, I think he should have played rook d6 and then go for e6. But of course, he might thought that there's king e2 for white, and after king g7, let's say there's something like g4, I'm not sure. And after king f6, probably f4 ideas. Like, this position is still slightly better for black, but I guess if with accurate play by white, it's going to be a draw. But of course, probably during this stage of the game, both sides are in some sort of time scrambles, and there are like inaccuracies or mistakes made. Well, let's see what happened in the game. King g7, king e2, f5. F5 is actually not a great move because it kind of just equalizes the position for white. What black should have done is actually still go rook d6 because just prevent this pawn from ever being pushed. And after rook d6, king e3, at least now after f5, there's always like some king f6, e6 ideas, or at least white's king cannot move away from the rook because there's always e6. But however, in the game, f5 was played immediately, and after f4, well, actually f4 somehow gives black some more chances. Here, the best way to make a draw immediately is to go rook e3 and threatening to go rook e6. And if you take on d5, well, unfortunately, there's now rook e7. And if you go, for example, something like, I don't know, king f7 to defend the e7 pawn, well, there's now rook e6. Again, if you take on d5, there's rook takes d5. And if you take, there's rook a6, and this should be a very easy draw. Alright, but let's go back. Instead of playing rook e3 in the game, f4 was played. White thought that fixing the pawn structure on the king side also leads to a very easy draw. And indeed, this is still a draw. But still, black will, f4 will leave black with a few chances. After king f6, king e3. Now, actually, both of, f4 and king e3 are two inaccuracies. Of course, here you cannot go rook e3 anymore because you're just losing the d5 pawn. But what white can do here is actually just to go h4. I mean, you have already gone for f4, then why not just fix the whole, the entire pawn structure on the king side, and it should be fine. After h4, if black goes h5, then this means that there's nothing is going to ever happen on the king side anymore, and all white needs to do is actually just to defend the d5 pawn, and for black, once the rook moves away to the c-file, the king will come over, and it's going to be a very easy draw. There's no chances for black to go e6. If black goes e6, then it should be a very easy draw, even if you're trading off into a king and pawn endgame for white. But however, in the game, after king f6, king e3 was played, which is also still fine. And after rook c8, g3, still a draw. And after h6, rook d4, slight inaccuracy, but still fine. Rook c3 check, king e2 back, g5. Well, you can see suddenly black is actually launching some sort of pawn breakthroughs on the king side, and white should be more careful than before. I mean, if white had gone h4 a few moves earlier, then g5 will not be an easy move by black to push because there are two pawns guarding the g5 square if white had pushed h4. But now, after g5, rook d3, offering a trade of rooks, and after rook c1, rook d1 back, rook c8, you can see that still, this is a draw, and black doesn't really had any progress, huge progress, but suddenly you can see that there is something, something slightly happening on the king side. King e3, rook c3 check again, rook d3, rook c1, rook d2 will actually, white can actually just go rook d1 back, and this should be already 2 times repetition. And of course, if Magnus wants to draw, then probably he'll just repeat it another time and 3 times repetition. Here white played rook d2, giving white some slight chances because you're giving black some slight chances because you're allowing black's rook to stay active on the first rank. Let's quickly see what happened. Oops. I slightly, okay, anyways. Where did we reach? So we reached, this position, right? Well, actually, I think you guys already saw what happened, but anyways. g4, rook d3, white just keep on waiting, h5, rook e2, rook c5, going back to defend the pawn, and rook d6. Both sides are just doing what they should be doing, and black is finally making some progress after rook c8, rook d1, d2, and now h4. Actually, h4 is not the best move, but if you play anything else like rook c1 or rook cda, it's going to be a draw. And the only way for black to create some winning chances is by going h4 to open up like files. And here, I want you guys to think. I'll give you two options: to take, or to allow black to push h3, or allow black to take your pawn. Well, I think black will most likely just push h3. So if you want to take, I'm going to give you two options: take or allow black to go h3. Just leave it there. Well, in the game, white played the wrong move, and it's actually like the losing move, and he played king e3. Now, you can see that the eval bar has already dropped, going for black's side. I mean, still, this is not completely winning for black, but king e3, this shows that white is suffering from some positional understanding of these endgames. Usually, especially in endgames where there are no queens on the board, what you just have to remember, whenever there's a pawn breakthrough, whenever your opponent is sacrificing a pawn, just take it. Because if you allow your opponent's pawn to be pushed way too high up at the board, it can sometimes lead to disasters with, for example, rook c1, rook g1, rook g2. Because h3, this pawn is just way too high up the board. It's just 2 squares away from promotion. So you always need to take with g takes h4. But after king e3, which was played in the game h3, king e2, and things are just going really bad for for white, sorry. And after a few moves like this, nothing gigantic, there's no big difference than before, but after a few moves, actually this is the losing move, rook e3. Again, rook d1, if rook d1 was played, probably still there are some drawing chances, but now there's actually rook d1, and if you take, there's something like king b6, king c5, and already, I mean, allowing black's pawn to push this high is not good for white. It's a bad sign, and it's actually it's right now just losing. Let's quickly see what happened. And after a few moves like this, white is just already down 1 pawn, and it's a very important pawn here. The pawn is just way too high up the board. You see, if the pawn were on h5, probably still it's going to be a draw, but the point is that it's on h3, and it's just way too high up the board. And after g3 here, white resigned, because Magnus is up 2 pawns, 2 very healthy pawns, very strong pawns, just a few moves away from being, from promotion, and here, Magnus's opponent resigned, and Magnus won this game. It's actually a really, I think this game can teach us a lot of things, especially in the endgame part. You have to know that, especially this place. I'm gonna find it, guys. h4. Just remember, in endgames, whenever your opponent is pushing a pawn like this, it's not being protected by any other pieces or pawns. It's just sacrificing a pawn, giving you a pawn. Just if you just leave it there, then this pawn will push to a very high square. Then you cannot allow that, and you have to take. G takes h4, you take. This is fine. And if black goes rook h8 here, nothing's gonna happen basically. You just go king f1, rook h4. Okay, maybe black is better here, but black is always better in the whole endgame stage. At least after rook h4, there's no clear way for black to get into the position, and white should be able to hold the draw if he had gone for g takes h4. But anyways, in the game, this happened. He played king e3, allowing black to go h3, and it ended in a disaster. But anyways, so I hope you guys enjoyed this game. I learned a lot from this game, especially in the endgame part. And thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!